in, everybody, to another edition of Sad Times, said in a happy voice. My name's Kevin. I'm your host. For those of you who have never listened to Sad Times before, here's a quick primer. Each week, we have a kind and generous guest who comes on to talk about stories from their life when they were sad, upset, angry, when they were dealing with things that they didn't understand, when they were around people who saw them going through pain and how those people reacted. And the goal here is not to diagnose the problem, solve the problem, or even judge the problem. It's simply to let the guest tell his or her story in the hopes that somebody out there listening will find something that helps them feel less alone. So that's what Sad Times is. Please, the whole goal of this show is to allow people to come on, as we said, but we would love for people to hear these stories. So if you know somebody who you feel could really benefit from hearing one of these stories, please share the podcast with them. And if you are a regular listener, thank you so much. But continue to please tell anyone you think would benefit from the show. We do have a website. It is www.sadtimespodcast.com. And on that, not only are there all of the episodes and things of that nature, there's also a form that you can fill out to be a guest. And today's guest is actually somebody who reached out through that form. If you do reach out, we will reach out to you and kind of let you know how it all works. The main rule is that the guest decides 100% of what we speak about on Sad Times. So before we get to that guest, we do, of course, have a sponsor, because I don't know how the hell these lights would stay on if we didn't. Let's get to that sponsor. I know, just you can all sit through it, folks. It's just very quick. Today's sponsor is the musical director on the Netflix reality show Love is Blind. When my cynicism with the marriage industrial complex is just about to push me over the edge and I turn off this unbelievably terrible reality show, thus taking my eyes off of Netflix, the music director of Love is Blind hits a G chord when someone is talking about that time that they were sad at a Baskin-Robbins as a child. And I keep watching. Thanks, music director. All right. As always, we do want you to support our sponsors. Please use the code FAKE at checkout. All right. Enough of the ads. Let's get to today's guest. His name is Andy. Andy, how's it going, man?
I'm okay. How are you today?
Man, I'm hanging in there. Not too bad. I was just commenting before we came on the air that you've got that cool Northwestern t-shirt on, which of course is just north of the city here, north of Chicago. And I believe you wore that for Brent and I, because we're in the Chicago area. Nice. I
did. My brother went to Northwestern, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And, I got up there once. I wish I could have gotten up there more, but there were some good times up in Evanston, and we also have, my wife has some family up in Wilmette as well. So
okay,
we like Chicago.
Right on. So do you guys get out here too much other than when you visited your brother?
We don't. We are not well off enough to come with all the family and everything, but my wife's family comes out here quite often, so we're pretty lucky in that. My brother doesn't live up there anymore, which is fortunate for us that he lives closer, but unfortunate that we don't get to go see him in Evanston, because that place is awesome. It is
cool, and it is literally the first. I mean, it's Chicago ends, Evanston begins. And when you say here, where is here?
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, wow.
My brother that lived in Evanston now lives in a town called Logan, Utah, which is where Utah State University is, which is our agricultural school.
Oh.
And it's almost as cold as Chicago in the winter.
Hey, I don't know if we have what's the word I want? Monopoly on that, but that if it's almost as cold, it's probably colder at times, and that's cold. That is cold and annoying is what that is. And I've been to Salt Lake City a few times. It is beautiful out there, man. First time I went there, everywhere I was just kind of walking around, And I was just looking, and everywhere I turned was just beautiful mountain ranges, it seemed to me. And did you grow up in that area as well?
I did. And as I get older, I find that those mountains are really where I want to be. I live in the city. I live 6 miles from our downtown area. The Salt Lake Valley. I address my envelope Salt Lake, even though I live in a township called Mill Creek.
Mm-hmm.
But the Salt Lake Valley is pretty large, and it's just suburbs. It's just crappy suburbs, and but then again, I do live like 3 miles west of the mountains. You had said before we got online that you'd been to Park City.
Yeah.
If you go over the mountains from where I live, just to the east, you'll hit Park City. So,
oh, okay, okay.
So I spent a lot of time up in the mountains as a kid, and I tried during 2020, 2021 to be up there multiple times a week, but we've just gotten too busy, and I haven't been able to get up as often as I want.
Are you a big skier?
I skied growing up. If you live in the right neighborhood in Salt Lake as a child, skiing can be a part of your elementary school experience.
Really? What do you? It's like at school?
Yeah, we did ski school every Friday in elementary school. We'd go for half a day up to one of the resorts and take ski lessons, and it was definitely like. I'm sure we'll get into this, but it was definitely an affluent thing. Like, like my wife went to elementary school here in the Valley as well, and their school did not do that because they were not far enough east. The east side of this valley is definitely the affluent side.
Interesting.
Where I grew up. But yeah, I grew up skiing, and ski season passes were really cheap when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
If you were in school, you could get a season pass for like $100, which is currently cheaper than the day pass that you can get as an adult, which is why I don't ski anymore.
That's a good answer. I don't ski anymore because one time I went skiing, I fell down the hill, and then I was on the lift, and I was the one that they had to stop the lift for because I couldn't figure out how the hell to ski off of it because I'm very smart. Brent, that's not that funny. That's just get it together, man. Jesus Christ. This is a serious podcast, Brent. Come on. I'm sorry about that, Andy. So that's why I don't ski. But you're from the area, and I think a lot of people, when they hear Salt Lake City, they hear Utah. Obviously, they think of the religion, and it's a very religious place, often associated with Mormons. Did you grow up in a religious family?
I did. So I was adopted at birth.
Okay.
And my parents that adopted me, whenever I talk about my adoption, anytime I say just my parents, I mean the ones that adopted me, were at the time, still are, Mormon is what most people would call it, but the church likes to be referred to as LDS, Latter-day Saint, because Mormon was a guy and not the church. It's a weird semantics.
Is it just called that because it's the Book of Mormon? Is that why people refer? Okay, right. Gotcha.
But so they are LDS. I did grow up in the church. I do still have some personal beliefs that I share with the church. I am on the records of the church.
What does that mean? On the records? Like you're baptized?
Right. Gotcha. I was baptized when I was 8. And there's a big thing right now within the last 10 years or so of people who are making it a very public point to go take their name off of the records of the church, to get their records removed, whether it be for political reasons because they don't agree with the politics of the church, whether it be for personal reasons, they don't have a faith in what the church believes in or not, whatever. I have some differing beliefs with the politics of most members in this church, but I don't find those to be a strong enough reason to take my name out.
Sure. Okay.
I guess it would be similar to Catholics that don't ever take their name out of the Catholic records, but just maybe don't go to gatherings.
Yeah, they don't go to, right. And it's right. Not, I'm glad that, I think you did a really nice job of framing that there. I mean, no matter what, we're all raised, not all, a lot of us are raised by parents who are really trying to do the best that they, the best for us, and they put us in situations that they think will help us. And I think when you and I were talking beforehand, you talked, I believe you used the phrase, kind of Utah Mormonism for Dummies, I believe is kind of how you refer to it. How, in that joking tone, like what does that mean to you? What is Utah Mormonism for Dummies?
Utah Mormonism versus like you had mentioned, you grew up near or knew some Mormon people in Illinois or whatever. Mormons in Utah take it to a different level, I guess would be the best way to say it.
Okay.
This is where I have a struggle, is that I find that I can separate the gospel, per se, the doctrine, from the people.
Okay.
The people take it weird places. Like when you hear that Mormons can't drink caffeine, like it never said that anywhere. There's no doctrine anywhere that says that.
Okay.
It's the culture itself came up with that and pushed that, and it became a thing.
Is that something that's taught? Like if you go to Sunday school, for lack of a better term, is it something that's taught?
That's what we call it too, by the way.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. No, it's not taught in church, which is the thing. It's not taught in Sunday school, but you go to your weird uncle's house on vacation and they don't have any Coke. And if you bring one into the house, you get in trouble, or you go to a weird uncle. Or you go to what other Christians would call like Bible camp, and if you show up with a Coke or an energy drink, like you get weird looks. I think the other driving factor in the caffeine issue is we have, I'm sure most listeners and yourself included have heard of Brigham Young University,
of course,
BYU.
Mm-hmm.
That's in Provo, Utah. And if you go to Provo, the closer you get to campus, the less likely you are to find any beverage with caffeine in it. And then you get on campus and you go to the concessions, you go to the food court or whatever, or the cafeteria or whatever you call it in college. There's soda fountains, but it's all caffeine-free Coke, caffeine-free Mountain Dew. It's all caffeine-free. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think that pushes a weird thing of like, oh, well, the church-owned school doesn't have caffeine on campus. That must mean there's something to that.
Yeah, it's like an endorsement of that idea, even though it's not, as you say, in any of the doctrines.
And that's a very lighthearted way of explaining the issue. You get more into it, and it's like the dating world is very weird. You don't go on one-on-one dates. It's all group dates. It's all hanging out. And a lot of that goes into like nothing good happens after dark kind of idea of like, we need to be in a group so nobody gets tempted, you know?
When you say group dates, do you mean like for couples, or are there like parents
Right.
involved?
No parents,
Okay.
but like multiple couples, like, and I don't even know what it's like outside of Utah, but like in high school, you go to these dances and you go as a group, you know, you get like 4, 5, 6 couples to go to the dance as a group. And that's how it is in college too, which is really weird because it's like we're supposed to be dating and getting to know, you know, our prospective person. How am I going to do that with 4 other people in
With
the room?
Steve over there? How am I going to do with Steve
Yeah.
sitting there always chewing with his mouth open? Sorry, Steve.
So and like again, it's still kind of a simple explanation, but like that's the culture here is like let's take these random things that somebody once said about maybe caffeine is a mind altering substance. We probably shouldn't have that ever, and if you have it, you're a bad person. Maybe being alone with a member of the opposite sex after dark is difficult to avoid temptation, so let's never do it ever. And you know, to bring it around, there's a lot of this weird culture that ties into everyday life, into your job, into your school, into your emotional health, into, you know, even just like just dumb things that don't matter. And if you go outside of Utah, well, if you go outside of Utah or Idaho, it's not that way, you know.
Right. So we have the example, obviously, the caffeine and the dating, but is it kind of the way that, are you kind of talking about kind of the general way that people kind of are expected to act and live and
Right.
So tell me more about that. What do you mean? Like, what is kind of expected on a day to day? If I were to come in and maybe I was having a bad day, how would I be expected to act in this culture that you're talking about?
You know, like my personal perception of it is that like there's kind of an expectation of like you need to be count your blessings is a big term that is used, and I'm sure it's in other Christianity as well.
Mm-hmm.
You need to count your blessings. You need to look at the silver linings in things. If you're having a bad day, maybe just get over it and let's talk about the good things that have happened, which is not necessarily bad. It's not bad advice to find your bright spot, I guess, but I feel like the way that it is used in our culture here is to a fault of maybe just push it down deep inside and don't think about it.
When you say push it down, so like, did you know people growing up who had, anxiety, depression, and then it just wasn't something that even like it wasn't spoken about, or if it was brought up, it was your faith should take care of that, or
Right.
You're not thinking about it the right way. It's that type of thing.
Right. I think I'm sure there are people in other faiths that have experienced the like, if you're sad, if you're depressed, you should pray about it. You should ask God for patience or strength or whatever, which is fine. But it's definitely a thing that I remember people who would talk, about I was having a really hard day and these things were happening, but then I remembered how blessed I am and things like that. And like, I think I should be clear that I don't find anything wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great if you can find your bright spot and benefit from that. If you can see the silver linings and use that to strengthen your patience. But the problem that I see in my own life and in other people's life is like, you asked if I knew people that maybe hid their depression or whatever. There's a girl I went to school with starting, like, we called it playgroup. I don't know what it's called. It's preschool. It was like all the moms sent us to a different mom's house every day. Basically like what daycare was.
Like a movable
90s.
daycare.
Yeah.
It's like Ernest Hemingway, a movable
I've known this
feast.
girl. Yeah. I've known this girl since daycare. I still interact with her every now and again now. So it's been 36 years that I've known this girl. And I had no idea that their family dealt with, depression, anxiety, whatever, until her older brother killed himself. We were in middle school and he was in high school and he overdosed on her depression medication.
Oh.
And that was the first suicide that I knew about. Like obviously in middle school, I knew suicide was a thing. I had heard the word. It didn't affect me.
Mm-hmm.
This family lived 6 or 7 houses up the street from me. Our entire school system, our elementary school, middle school, and high school in our neighborhood all had multiple weeks of, if you knew the family and you need to talk, come talk to the counselors. Like
that was offered.
Yeah.
Okay.
It hit our community that hard.
Wow.
Which I guess says something good about the community that we were raised in, but like, I didn't know what any of that meant. I didn't even know they were struggling with that kind of stuff because we all hid all that crap, Nobody talked about it.
And even when you were a kid, was it implied that you hide it, or was it explicit, like you don't talk about that, when you're out in public?
I don't even know. Like, I was so young, I didn't know like what it meant, And then as I got older, I think, as I mentioned before, I grew up in a very affluent neighborhood, in a very affluent home. I don't think any of us really realized we were struggling.
Okay.
I've been thinking a lot about this because I've been stressing about how to say these things the way that I want to. And I'm realizing now, I don't think I knew I had anxiety growing up. We all thought I was just shy.
Oh.
And so, me not wanting to present something in a school assembly was, Andy's just shy.
Yeah.
When really I'm like freaking out and crying because I can't imagine myself going on that stage and saying anything in front of people,
Were you able to articulate at any point? I know you said you didn't really know that you had anxiety, and I'm sorry to cut you off. Were you able to articulate that at any point, even just to say, I don't want to go up there or anything like that? Or was it just more reticence until you didn't do it and then everybody, chalked it up to you being shy?
The second option. I was diagnosed with anxiety when I was 24. I was in college at a community college and couldn't bring myself to even go to the classroom. It was the, I'm sorry, I'm struggling over my words.
No worries.
The class that I had a hard time with, I was never enrolled full time in college because I couldn't do it. So I would work part time and I would take 2 or 3 classes at a time. And the class that I had a really hard time with was a business ethics class. And the teacher, I didn't like the teacher, and I was having a really hard time with communicating. And so I would go to the school, I was an adult, so I'd get myself to the school and I would start walking to class and my heart would start racing and I'd start getting like a knot in my throat or whatever. And I would walk right past that classroom and go across the street. There was a bar that me and my friends would go to. And, at the time, young LDS boy, it was not a place that I probably should have been according to the culture, but I would go over there and hang out instead of going to class because something was wrong and I couldn't figure it out. And after a couple of weeks, I finally, I remember I had a breakdown. I still lived at home. That's a thing in Utah, is we all don't usually move out right away after high school like everybody else does because it's Utah. It's a weird thing.
Is it that you don't really move out until you have found a spouse? Is that kind of the direction that's going, or no?
College or spouse.
College or spouse. Or if you're lucky, both.
Yeah, exactly. So I moved out on my 25th birthday.
Okay.
But at the time, I think I must have been 23 or 24. And I walked in to where my mom was and with my, chin trembling and breathing fast. And she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know what's wrong." Because this had never happened to me before. But things were getting worse. I was having a hard time going to class. And, I was just like, this is not normal. And I had my first real, genuine panic attack. Like my spells of being shy as a child were usually ended with me enforcing that I was not going to do whatever thing they were trying to force me to.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm an adult, I can't do that. I can't avoid college. I can't avoid work. So now I'm forced to do the thing. And so now I'm having a panic attack. And, my mom was really, really cool about it. There was no stigma. She wasn't like trying to make me hide things or anything, but I think our current culture of let's talk about your problems. It's normal to have anxiety. There's a podcast that I'm going to go on about anxiety. That wasn't a thing, 13, 14 years ago when all this was happening. It was like, I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to figure out what's wrong with me. And then I'm going to go back to school and pretend like nothing's wrong.
When you had that panic attack in front of your mom, when, you were already, it sounds like, basically on the precipice of it when you walked in there to talk to her. And you said she was great about it. Was she just really accepting of it? Were you able to even articulate the anxiety you were feeling, or did you just kind of cry and break down?
I remember her asking me what was wrong and me telling her nothing was wrong, and that was what was wrong. And then I broke down and cried. My mom is the most nurturing, wonderful mother. She has her own issues that I'm sure we can discuss, but when it comes to her children, this is what she was born to do. She came over and, I'm 24 years old. I'm a grown man, and I sat in her lap and cried.
Yeah.
And to this day, I mean, growing up from probably 12 years old until I was 25 and moved out, I had a really difficult relationship with my mom when it came to behavior. But now I go over every Sunday and I try and make a good 20, 30 minutes of our visit where it's just me and my mom in a room talking and commiserating. And so when it comes to the depression and anxiety, I know we talked a lot when we spoke on the phone about like my dad not understanding, but my mom gets it.
Your mom gets it.
Mom, she doesn't know how to help because she is from that generation that there was no option. You just sucked it up and dealt with it. But she gets it. And so she will sit and hold me if I need it. Which is what I need.
Often what helps, right? It's
right.
And you said what when you said from like 12 to 25, was it an issue on your end, like you were lashing out, or what do you mean with the difficulties between you and your mom?
I also have been diagnosed with ADD.
Okay.
I think that combined with the anxiety made things really hard. We also, I mentioned this in an email, but I think that it's probably valid to bring up. Our culture in Utah also puts a lot of stock into your academic performance, your everything that ties into. Once you get out of school, what do you do professionally? Once you are settled professionally, how are you as a family person? That kind of how it appears to other people. And my ADD mixed with my anxiety made it very hard for me in school. When we were kids, I know you're a couple of years older than me, but when we were kids, they didn't really have programs for kids that needed alternative learning options that were as easily attainable. I know they existed. I know Montessori schools have been around forever, and I know there are other schools out there, but nobody really knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so sticking me in public school meant once I got into middle school, I started getting D's. I started, having a hard time because.
And how did that go over at home?
It was terrible. My older brother, straight A student, the first grade that he got that was not an A was in a ballroom dance class in college. He got a B, and he got a B because he had started dating somebody and decided that missing a couple of ballroom dance classes was not going to be a big deal. This brother also now is a professor in college, got his PhD at Northwestern, is very successful. So coming up behind him,
mm-hmm.
It was like, why the hell did you get a B in English?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Because I've got problems, man. So it was hard. It was really hard. My dad is now retired as a banker, very intelligent, very successful. And so he also could not necessarily understand why one of his children would be struggling in school. My mom, I mentioned a second ago, she had a few issues herself. She was the oldest child of 5 children. And she was brought up to let her siblings win at everything, let her siblings be correct, all that kind of stuff. Like, you're the oldest, you let your younger sibling win this game.
Why didn't anybody teach that to my sister? I'm just curious. Right? That would have helped.
And so then when she became parent, if we're having an argument, mom is correct no matter what, because she's the mom, she's right. This I should state, this is my diagnosis that I came up with in high school when I was like, why the hell is my mom not acknowledging things that, maybe I'm correct about? And so this is something that I kind of analyzed of stories she told me and things she talked about from her memories as a child. And I kind of, put one and two together and came out with four, and think that she had some anger issues with me because she needed to have that control, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's a perceptive, a perceptive read on that, of course. And especially it's an odd, because it also sounds like not only was she the oldest sibling, but she was also a de facto parent in a weird way.
Right.
So, but by the time you moved out, at 25, you guys kind of were able to, especially when you had the difficult panic attack in front of her, you guys had a stronger bond.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom and I definitely, I would say the amount of arguing between my mom and me from the time I was 25 until now, I'm 30, I'll be 38 in a couple of months, has gone down by 99%. I don't remember the last time I had an argument with my mom. My dad is a different story. We do still rely on him for a few things. He's our landlord. He's helped us with some loans and things like that. And so there is still some relationship with him that is rocky, because it goes deeper than just, you're my dad. You are also my banker and my landlord and my legal advisor. And so that one's difficult still. And as far as the anxiety, the depression, all that kind of stuff, my dad is difficult as well, because I think we still live in a culture where men can't acknowledge that they're sad or that they're anxious.
The culture you came up in, it's still not really acceptable to be a man and then say that. So have you tried to express to your dad that in the past that you're anxious or that you're struggling, and that it's not that you're shy, it's that you have anxiety?
Yeah. I remember early on one conversation where he told me, to paraphrase, he basically just said, well, you just need to buck up and try harder, basically. I don't remember the exact wording he used, but it was something to that effect. It was basically, get over it.
Mm-hmm. He didn't quote the Eagles song, did he?
Which one?
Get Over It. That was their single when they got back together in the mid 90s.
I just barely started getting into the Eagles, so that
yeah, don't worry, you can miss that one. It's okay to miss that one.
So, my dad, things have changed. I'm not going to say they've gotten better, but they have evolved from get over it to things will get better, just keep trying. Which I don't think is a bad mentality.
Yeah.
Christianity is all about patience and enduring to the end is a big common theme, especially in Mormonism. But I think the problem there is he still says it in in a way that implies that
It's your fault or you're not trying hard enough? I don't
not
mean to put words in
necessarily
your
that
mouth.
it's
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, not necessarily that it's my fault. Maybe more so ignore the problem and just keep pushing.
So don't
Like,
address the underlying problem. The goal here is to make the problem go away, or excuse me, to make the feeling or the anxiety go away, not to solve the problem.
right, exactly. And I think this is a thing that I've been thinking about today as well. I think to bring it back around to kind of the culture here, I'm a person that I feel like I'm in good company here. We're both similar in the way that um, I don't want to bring down the happiness of the company that I'm in, but I'm not gonna hide the fact that I'm having a hard day. I think there's something to be said about if you can admit that you have a problem, maybe you can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I often, if you ask me how my day is, with a smile, I'll try and be happy, but with a smile, I'll say, "Oh, it's terrible. How's yours?"
That
And
throws
then
people
we can
off,
move
doesn't
on.
it?
Yeah, yeah, and like that's a hard thing in this culture because we're supposed to be happy all the time. Everything's supposed to be wonderful and exciting and enthusiastic. Um, and it made my single life and uh, my friend relationships a little bit hard. Um, but I've been doing it for a long time.
Wait, I'm sorry. Why did it make your single life and your friend relationships difficult? What do you mean by that?
Interacting with other people in the community, in the friend groups, whatever, was difficult in that I think there are people who would prefer that you push your problems away and avoid them. Um,
Do you find that now as you're more open, I mean you've come on the show to talk about this stuff and share your story. Do you find as you're more open and you were talking 13 years ago, et cetera, that things were different? Do you find that in groups of friends now you can be more honest about your struggles or even with your family?
yeah, more so with friends. I definitely think times have changed enough. Um, and I think that uh, you find, I hate to use this terminology, but you find the other weirdos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I only hate to use that because it's so related to a lot of types of people that I don't necessarily want to find. Um, but like, I just started a new job in May, and I found that I can interact with certain people on my team better than others because we all kind of admit, yeah, today sucks. I'm depressed. Let's get to work. We can laugh about how much today sucks together.
That's awesome. And they all came up in the same culture that you're talking about too, with the always has to be
Right.
positive. So it's almost as if your generation is, in a small extent, breaking through that a little bit. Would you say that's fair, or is that too
Yeah,
premature to say?
I do think that's fair. I also think there is an aspect of uh, politics to it, unfortunately. Uh,
Mm.
I I think the more progressive you get in this community, in this culture, the more okay it is to be uh, not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I'm gonna use Dodgeball, the movie, as an explanation for this.
Okay, that sounds good.
If you are if you're more conservative, anywhere really, but especially in a community that's very faith based and very religious and Christian, you are Globo Gym, where everything's got to look awesome and happy and excited. And if you're a little bit more progressive, you're not okay. I'm not okay, and that's okay. You're average Joes. We are the average Joe's gym, and I like it that way. I really do, because like you, it's not there's not as much pressure to be perfect, to be happy, to be uh, cookie cutter, and you can still be okay and have fun
And
together.
you're being honest. It sounds like you're being honest to your authentic self, and you're not hiding it anymore, or nor are you acting as if it's not even existing.
Right. Um, but I think with like friends and dating and stuff, uh, when I was 23 to 24, I started going outside of groups of friends from the church and going to bars and going to parties and things like that. And I still saw a lot of the same behavior. But I think that was also when like Facebook was coming up and Instagram. And I think a lot of people were trying to do the whole doing it for the gram thing of like, we gotta take this cool picture of us at the bar together, having fun and being happy. And so it was still difficult even when I got out of the church group, you know? Um, and I think the other half of that was I was too anxious to talk to anybody, but
Were you anxious because you were afraid you were going to say the wrong thing, or you didn't think anybody wanted to hear what you had to say, or maybe a combination of both, or something else?
combination of both, and also low self-esteem, I think. Um, I don't know. Uh, I, I'm growing up in the culture I grew up in. It was weird to be 24 and not married, and so going to a bar of all places as a 24-year-old LDS boy, trying to meet people, girls especially, I was like, okay, this is weird. I'm the weird one. I don't necessarily feel like I'm the attractive one in the room. I don't know if I'm going to say the wrong things. So, like, add all of the things together, and it was like, I don't know how to interact with these people, with anybody, because, like, I'm anxious. At the time, I didn't realize that maybe I was depressed. I'm also fighting against the counterculture by being a part of the main culture, uh, being an LDS person, going into a bar to interact with people, like
Yeah. Sounds
just
like the beginning of
add
a
all of
joke
these things
almost.
together. And like, and I straddled the line for a really long time of being, going to church and trying to interact with those people, and then going to the bars on Friday and Saturday night and trying to interact with those people. And so on Sundays, I was not good enough for those people. And on Friday and Saturday nights, I was too like religious for those people.
Mm.
And I think that caused a lot of anxiety of like, instead of just going into it and just saying, you know what, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to be, let's talk. I went into it already expecting to be handicapped by my lifestyle, by my anxiety, whatever. Um, the good news is I did end up meeting and somehow winning over a girl who's now my wife.
Oh,
She had just gotten out of a long-term relationship and for some reason decided I looked like a person she wanted to hang out with, which I still don't understand. And I think our anxieties meshed in a way that it was like parts of a puzzle that needed to be put together in order to function.
and do you feel too now that with her as your spouse that you now have somebody that you can lean on, can be fully transparent with when you are having your struggles? You talked about anxiety, of course, and then depression. Do you feel like you guys have a healthy conversation around those topics?
I do. We have our moments where we disagree or we miscommunicate, but like we've been married for 9 years and we've never had a fight that didn't get addressed and fixed within a couple of hours. We've always slept in the same bed. There's never been a doghouse or a couch situation. There are other aspects of life that have arisen, children, jobs, debt, all of those things that make it so that there are times when one or both of us can't necessarily be emotionally all the way available for the other person, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's been times where I've told her, I'm struggling with this thing. And she said, I understand. I can't help you with that right now. I'm struggling with this thing. And that's fine, but we've been able to be there for each other in ways that have been beneficial for each other's respective anxieties and issues. And I definitely think we found the right teammate in each other.
That's great.
She definitely, my parents are absolutely smitten and in love with her. And so when I'm struggling to talk to them, she's the one that's like, I understand. I will say what needs to be said. They'll listen to me. It'll be fine. Which is awesome. Because it works every time. But it definitely, I feel like in all of this darkness, she definitely is that bright spot. She is that anchor, to be cliche.
Well, cliches are there for a reason, right? They're usually true.
Right. Yeah.
And have you, other than her, and that's wonderful that you have that, have you tried therapy at all? Is that been an avenue you've gone down?
I've done it a couple of times. I believe in it. I think it's good. I think it's positive. The first therapist I ever saw was in high school. My mom sent me to him because she thought I had a porn addiction, and he specialized in porn addiction. Every high schooler in our generation that suddenly had the internet looked at something. So I'm not going to say she didn't have good reason to think that maybe that was a problem. I did not have a porn addiction, but we sat and talked a lot. I went to him quite a bit in high school. And it usually ended up being discussing how to interact with my parents, because he realized I didn't really have a porn addiction.
Okay. So it turned out to be a very positive experience for you.
Right. He was awesome. I loved talking to that guy. I wish that I could I ought to see if he's still in business. He was not a psychiatrist, so there was no, let's see if medication can help you. It was more just, let's talk out your feelings. You lay on this wonderful plush leather couch and we can talk,
Yeah.
I have tried a number of therapists in my recent years. 2 or 3 I couldn't afford because our healthcare system sucks. My copay was like like $150.
If you'll allow me, Andy, Wade, Brent, if we could hit the insurance fucked somebody bell. Thank you. There we go. Hey, health insurance. We're here except for when you need us. Okay. So you go ahead. So $150. That's a lot of money.
So the most recent experience I had, I just started a new job. Great company, great insurance in relativity, and they have their own medical and mental health clinic on site that is free to employees.
That's awesome.
Which so far has been, pretty decent. The therapy, on the other hand, I met with her 3 or 4 times. In those, the first 2 visits are let's get to know you, obviously. And then the following 2, we started to delve into some of the issues. And the final visit, she insisted on, there were 2 different options that she was giving me for like solutions to some of these problems I was having. There were only 2 solutions. And I proceeded to explain to her that I had already tried those 2 things multiple times and they weren't working. What else can I do? And she essentially told me that she felt as if I was putting up brick walls and didn't want her help. So we should explore me seeing somebody else.
And she basically said that because she said, try thing A or thing B, and you said, I've tried both. And she said, well, you're putting up a brick wall.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
To her defense, I don't know how much she's making being an on-call therapist for a corporate entity. I don't know what the background is, if she's doing this as like volunteer work or whatever, but it felt rough. She kept saying like, I'm not quitting on you. I'm here for you. You tell me what we need to do, but maybe you should try the other therapist on staff, which I have not done yet. I did meet him in person today, ironically.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know if you're aware, but today is National Mental Health Day. And our company made a really big deal of that and had our mental health professionals on site today in the lunchroom.
Well, I tell you what, I knew that my brain was tingling for a reason.
Yeah. So I did meet him. I do intend on seeing him. I ran into the other doctor out as I was walking back to my building, and she awkwardly said hello and then tried to get away pretty quick. I think she felt real weird meeting me in person,
mm-hmm.
because all of our visits were virtual. But I do, another thing that I've been looking at is, I don't know if I can talk about this, if you're cool with me talking about medication on.
Oh, of course. On
the podcast.
Please.
The FDA has approved a medication. I don't fully understand the science behind this. It is related to, I think it's one of those things like how there's a THC and then there's like Delta 9 THC where it's like one molecule different. And so it's legal or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I think in that vein, there's a medication the FDA has approved now called Spravato, which is very closely linked to ketamine.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm.
And ketamine is now being researched for depression and anxiety. And I'm at a point with these things where I feel like I need to try something different. I need to try something new. I've not been medicated since I was 24. When I had that anxiety attack with my mom, I did start medication for my anxiety and I didn't like it. They put me on Zoloft and it made me depressed, really.
Yeah, and
I
sorry to interrupt you, Andy. I just
good.
wanted to say that I had Zoloft prescribed to me as well. It definitely did not work, but this is a good time to say that the first medication, it's always worth going back. At least in my experience, I've had to try multiple medications to get the one for me that worked. So I'm glad to hear that you're looking into trying something else if you feel you do need the help. That's great.
Right. So, I guess there's a blood test you can do where they test to see what medications your body will react to now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been meaning to get that. I just don't really have a lot of time, which is also adding to the anxiety. The depression is there's no time when you can't afford to pay the bills. And so both parents have to work full time and all that. But I've been meaning to do that because I do think that it's something that I want to explore. Something else I haven't mentioned during this interview that I did mention in our discussion on the phone was I also have some autoimmune disorders, Hashimoto's disease, hypothyroidism. Both of those are thyroid issues, and thyroid disorders often result in fatigue, low metabolism, things like that. My thyroid issues are under control, as the doctor says, but I'm still fatigued. And so now they're saying, well, maybe you need to talk to a therapist and see if you have depression, which is why I am looking at depression medicine now, because I'm exhausted all the time. And, the anxiety is one thing, but I look back on my 20s, my 30s, my teenage years, and I've always been really tired, which could go into the thyroid thing. But I told you this when I talked to you last week, and I still find this to be something that I'm grateful for. But I've never felt a suicidal thought in my life, which is why I didn't think I had depression.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Well, one, I'm very glad to hear that you have not had those thoughts, and two, it's the absolutism that sometimes, well, it must. If I'm not thinking about hurting myself, I must not be depressed. So right. And then maybe we lapse back into buck up and all that good stuff.
Right. So, I've been sad, and I believe like there's kind of that discussion, especially online now that everything's online, of like, you're not depressed, you're just sad. You're not OCD, you just like things a certain way. You're not this, there is a level clinically that you need to be at to be depressed or whatever. And like, I think there is a spectrum,
mm-hmm.
but in my younger years, I always figured, I'm just sad. I'm not depressed. I'm just sad. I'm just having a hard day. I am just having, a hard week or whatever. But that kind of stopped probably a year ago. And
you mean you're identifying it as just having a bad day stopped about a year ago, and you've seen it as more of a long-term issue?
Because that bad day has been that bad 365 days.
Don't forget about leap years, Andy.
Yeah.
That's
Is it
a
a leap
chance to
year?
have. Next year will be. That's one more bad day you get to have. Cheers.
At first, I thought I was just tired and stressed because I've got 2 children. My oldest is in school now. He's in elementary school. He started last year, last September. And my youngest started daycare last October. He was 4 months. I don't know. So they started getting sick because they're suddenly around all these other kids. And so we stopped sleeping because the kids are sick. And so was I just tired because the baby didn't sleep all night? And I'm on day 3 of not sleeping for all night long and having to go to work each day. I don't think so, because that's been every other week now since last October. Both kids have been sick. And I should be used to this by now, right? I should be used to the anxiety of, is my kid's school going to call and tell me to come get him? And it got real hard in the wintertime. I think I got some of that seasonal affective disorder thing. And I joke about this, and but like, I found a lot of solace in listening to really sad country music.
I love sad music, man.
Yeah, I think, and I enjoy it. I like a lot of different genres, but like, I started getting into like really sad Coulter Wall and Charlie Crockett.
Yeah, I love Coulter Wall.
I don't know if you've heard of Vincent Neil Emerson.
I don't know that I have.
He's toured with Coulter Wall, and amazing voice, amazing musician, but he's got some of the saddest. Like, I go back and listen now, and it puts me right back in that mood, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it was like every single day for the last year, I'm just like, maybe it is depression. Maybe I am. Maybe I do need to go to that doctor and see if they can give me something to deal with this. And is that why I've been tired my whole life? Is that why I've been, like, it's all starting to click,
right? And as you're at that point now, you reached out again. I was very pleased that you were able to come on and tell this story, but it sounds like to me, as we're wrapping up here, that it sounds like you have gotten to a point, nothing is solved, nor will it maybe ever be solved, but you're starting to understand a little bit more. It sounds like you're becoming a little more accepting of the troubles that you have, and now you're working on a new way to address that, and I think that's a really positive thing.
Right. Yeah. It is difficult. Like, I don't have any answers yet, as you said. I don't have any good coping methods right now. I try to be physically active. Part of my autoimmune disorder treatment involves good nutrition and good exercise.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if I'm sad and tired, I don't want to go for a run.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the catch-22 of all catch-22s, right?
But I've started actually just within the last week or two, especially since listening to your interview with the guest that is into marathons and stuff.
John.
I started running with my dog in the afternoon.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which has been really good. She also has anxiety, by the way.
Does she take anything for it?
She's on Prozac.
Hey!
She's been on Prozac for about 2 years. And like, she's been a struggle for sure, because I'm like, I got a dog and she's also broken. Yay. But it's been really good the last couple of, like, the last week. I go on like a 20-minute run with her after work, and I'm not running the whole time. Like, I'm no pro Kevin Crispin marathon runner.
Nope. Not a thing.
But I'll go and I do like walk run drills with her, and we'll run for 2 minutes and then walk for 2 minutes, and then, and it's been kind of nice, very cathartic. And at the end of the run, she comes over and tries to rub up into me and lick my face, and so that's been kind of nice. But I guess my whole reason for coming on is just like, I'm hoping that there's somebody out there that can relate in a way that they can see, like, how do I want to say this? I feel like, as another guest of yours who I was listening to earlier today about social anxiety was talking about, I feel like in this large community that I grew up in, I feel more alone in the large community than I do when I'm alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that there's someone out there that maybe is feeling that way, can see that they're not.
Andy, you basically said the whole mission statement of what we try to do at Sad Times right there. I think that's a wonderful thing to end on. Also, hearing that you are doing the walk run with the dog, and that dog is loving it, because she is probably getting some relief from her anxiety. That makes me so happy to hear that. And, as we are wrapping up, is there anything else that you would like to impart? I mean, I think that was perfect, but is there anything else that maybe you didn't get to say that maybe you wanted to share before we wrap up?
No, not necessarily. Like, I don't have any good advice for anybody. I don't have any quick fixes or solutions, but I do think there's a good positive thing to be said about what you're doing, about trying to bring people together. And if there's anybody that is hearing this that feels a connection in the struggle with a family, or the struggle with community or Christianity or whatever, like if you want to reach out, like, I don't see any problem talking about it and commiserating at the very least. Misery loves company. And bounce ideas off of each other or whatever. And
yeah, and you've already been pretty active in the Sad Times Facebook page, and they can definitely find you there as well.
I've been in there a little bit. One of my coping mechanisms has been listening to audiobooks. So if anybody wants to communicate with me there about what you're reading, and maybe we can talk about that, that'd be rad. But yeah, like, I guess my biggest coping mechanism is community. Even though I've talked a lot about how community has been difficult, I think building a new community of people who can relate and who can help each other, we're all in this together, and we all can help each other in some way or another. And if I can help, I want to. And if somebody else can help, please help me.
Well, and Andy, by the way, is Brent, just write this down. Andy's now the new co-host of the show because he's saying it better than I ever did. So about reaching out, and we're all in this together, and that's right. And Andy, you didn't have to reach out to us. You didn't have to come on here and tell your story, and we're so appreciative that you did. And I'm so happy to hear that you seem to be at a really good spot, and hopefully some good things are coming ahead for you. And as you mentioned, we have that Sad Times Facebook group. If you search that Sad Times in Facebook, you'll find us there. If you see the logo of our podcast, that's what's on the page. So, Andy, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I also appreciate it. This has been great. Good.
I'm glad to hear it, man. And hopefully we'll talk more books and such in the coming days. And really appreciate it. And to everybody else who's listening, I'll try to end it the same way I always do, which is just a reminder that there's always room for kindness and grace, even with yourself. I forget it constantly. And I try to remind myself that there is always room for kindness and grace. And we will see you next time on Sad Times.
You've been listening to a Fourth Hand Joint.